Two cousins linked to the Comancheros have been found guilty of murdering a man and trying to murder his wife in Mangere. Abraham Tuuhiava was shot dead and his wife Yolanda severely injured on Greenwood Road last May. Over the past 4 weeks, a High Court jury has heard about the last minutes of Mr Tuuhiava's life and the roles played by Mesui Tufui and Fesilau Taipavalu in the shootings and the connection to the Comancheros in Australia. Anneke Smith was in court today, and I asked her what happened when the verdict was delivered.
So the public gallery has been filled with family members from both sides throughout the entire trial, so the whole 4 weeks. And when the verdicts were read out, some of them started to cry. There'd been some younger children there as well, and it was quite a sad sort of atmosphere, but the two men themselves remained really stoic. They just stared straight ahead as the guilty verdicts for murder and attempted murder for each of them were read out.
Yeah, so just remind us, what's the background to this case?
So the Crown's case is that these two men, cousins, had helped another cousin, Viliami Tani, who had earlier pleaded guilty to murder and attempted murder, in luring the Tuuhiavas to Greenwood Road in Mangere that night. That they knew of Tani's plan to shoot them and murder them, and by default they were criminally liable.
Yeah, because they knew exactly what his plan was. They knew he planned to kill them.
The Crown's case was never that they pulled the trigger. Tani had pleaded guilty to that. It was that they knew of his plan and were present and ready to assist him, and so they're equally as guilty.
Right. So, in hearing all the details of this, what have we learnt about connections with the Comancheros in Australia? Because this is a motorcycle gang, right?
Yeah, we would have heard of the Comancheros a lot over the past 4 weeks, and that's because they came into the Crown's case being the motivation for this shooting. The court had heard that it was a potential hit ordered by the Comancheros in Australia on Abraham Tuuhiava, and there were several elements to this theory made up of 2 parts, 2 meetings actually, on the night of the shooting and then later that night. So the jury had heard that the 3 men had gone to McDonald's in South Auckland, one of the restaurants, and had met Abraham that night. That Tani had got out of the car, had chatted away to him and got back into the car. Now, Tufui had told police that he heard Tani call someone on Snapchat shortly after that, saying, "What's the go with the Nomads?" which is another gang. Abraham Tuuhiava was a Patch Nomads member, and he had told police that the person on the other end had an Australian accent. So that's how Australia comes into it. The second meeting that was of importance was one at Bucklands Beach, where Tana again got out of the car, walked off into the darkness, came back 5 minutes later, and Tufui had told police that later, driving off, Tana had leant over to Taipavalu and said, so let me just check my notes to make sure I get this right, said that had been given the green light, and then later said, "That's the guy that's making money off the Como's name and we're going to put him to sleep." So thus forms the theory that this had potentially was given the green light from Australia, and we are where we are today.
That it was some kind of hit, basically.
Yeah.
And what happens next? Because I'm also interested in the wife who was severely injured. She was shot several times in the head, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was shot 4 times in total, twice in the arm and 2 times in the head. Obviously, incredibly serious injuries, but miraculously did survive. Her husband died really quickly, but she crawled over to the side, the roadside, so motorists could see her. And this all time-wise supposedly happened around midnight, so she would have been lying in the grass for some time. Obviously incredibly traumatic thing to happen, and she was spotted by a motorist early the next day. She gave evidence in this trial from an undisclosed location via audio-visual link, and it's quite interesting because she was there that night and she did see quite a bit. That's sort of her evidence is how we know what we know from what happened that night, but she struggled to remember things at times. Obviously, she was shot twice in the head and actually still has a bullet lodged in her brain. Surgeons weren't able to take it out without that posing a threat to her life. So she's still recovering. And the next step is that the men will come back to court in August for sentencing.
And that's our court reporter, Anneke Smith.